Zack, bumm, da sind wir wieder. Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Thursday Night Deck Building. And this time I'm going to go out of my comfort zone a little bit and have a look at a deck from the old Decipher days that could win in a single turn. Of course, the game changed quite a lot over the years, so when looking at historic decks, it's always important to be aware of the exact period we're talking about. So the first contact, pre-first contact era was decidedly different from the golden age around Blaze of Glory, and that in turn was quite different from the dying days around holodeck and motion pictures and all good things. So today's deck is from early 2001. Mirror Mirror had just been released, but we're talking about a time before the Delta Quadrant arrived with the Voyager expansion. So certain obvious counter strategies that you might have in mind to what you're going to see simply weren't available back then. And also timing was quite different. What you could do when was quite different from how it is played today, and different from what you usually see on this channel when you watch OTF decks. Now, I wasn't active in the tournament scene myself at the time, so I had to do some digging to find how rules worked back then in order to explain everything. I hope I got things right, but if you find anything that doesn't check out, please let me know in the comments. So the core of today's deck comes from a German player and longtime ambassador, Thorsten Warneck. Unfortunately, the decklist he uploaded to STCCG Turnier, the foremost CCG site in Germany, the decklist wasn't quite complete. There seems to be a card missing. Another card in a seed deck doesn't make a lot of sense, so I tried to fix these things as logically as I could, and hopefully the deck is consistent with the general idea. So what was the general idea? Well, we drop 10 personal on our first turn, do a Q-Pie pass or two, and then win the game before our opponent gets to play a proper turn. Easy enough. So let's have a look at our setup here. We start with some doorways that are not out of the ordinary. We've got an alternate universe door, QStand, and a space-time portal. By the way, the cards that you're going to see here on screen are the modern versions that might include errata, either by Decipher later on or by the Continuing Committee. If you want to look at the cards as they were used back then, just have a look at your printed cards. Or if you go to the TrackCC website, you can also find the original images in a link to the right of the current image. So you can look up everything if you need to. So the ubiquitous QStand, the alternate universe doorway, and an STP. The mission phase is next, and as for missions, we run Pegasus Search, Cultural Observation, Relocate Settlers, and Study Hole in Space in the Alpha Quadrant. Here in the Alpha Quadrant, we really try to have these two missions, Pegasus and Cultural Observation, as close to Relocate Settlers or the Beta region as we can. In the Mirror Quadrant, we have Disrupt Alliance and Mine Dilithium. Again, ideally, these two are close to each other, but if our opponent gets to put a mission in between these two, we can still deal with that. When we seed Disrupt Alliance, we get to download an emblem card. So let's go for Emblem of the Alliance, and this in turn allows us to download the Art of Diplomacy. These two cards likely won't matter in the game. All right, then let's have a look at the remaining seed parts. After doorways and missions, it's on to dilemmas. There are 12 dilemmas here that we can put under our opponent's mission. Thorsten, for example, went for 6 copies of Ferengi Infestation, which was one of the really good walls back then, and some staples like Cytherian's Borg ship, the Dead End, of course, the Shellyak he had in there. But really, what's important is the dilemmas that we put under our own missions. And we really want to have a Q dilemma under these two missions here. Now, if you think back to that time, we didn't use batch seeding in those days, but rather we seeded cards alternatingly. So that means one person puts a card down, and if somebody else wants to place another dilemma at that mission, it goes on the bottom to be encountered before the one that was already there. So the seed phase was much more intricate and a lot trickier, and the more dilemmas you had, the more flexible you were. I've seen a lot of deck lists from the time that had only around 10 dilemmas or so. So with Torsten's 15 or 14 dilemmas here, chances apparently were rather good that he could in fact put a Q as the first seed card to be encountered under these two missions. Maybe you could also do something with opponents' missions, depending on the spaceline layout, but that's ideally what he wanted to go for. Okay, what else have we got? The last part is the facilities phase, previously called the outpost phase, and there we have 4 hidden agendas. We will reveal them in a few moments. Then we have assigned support personnel, 2 copies of Make It So, a transporter mix-up, and then we have a regular Federation outpost at cultural observation, so ideally next door from relocate settlers. We also have a Terran outpost seated at Mine Dilithium. We have the Halcyon Council that when seeded allows us to download a mirror quadrant ship there, mirror constitution class ship there, the ISS Enterprise. Now normally in the modern game I would now use the special download in the seed phase. Back then special downloads could not be used in the seed phase, so that's one thing that has changed. What else have we got? Well, there is the Treaty Federation Bajoran, and there is also Assign Mission Specialists, which will get us Alyssa Ogawa and Nora Satie to our Alpha Quadrant outpost. In theory, we could also put them on the Terran outpost in the Mirror Quadrant, but we want them here. That's it. Looks like a lot of setup, but if we win the coin toss, the rest of the game could be over very quickly. Let's shuffle our deck, draw our opening hand of 7 cards, and then we will immediately ignore our opening hand again, because back in those days, certain things that are now considered orders were actually allowed to do in the play phase, so before you actually do your card play. So let's go over it. The ISS Enterprise uses a special download of any Terran Empire original series personnel to get James Tiberius Kirk from the QStand. He goes on to download the classic communicator. I'll leave the QStand open for the moment here. Then we have assigned support personnel. We will discard that to download such a personnel. Let's open our deck, and we are looking for Eric Pressman here. Eric Pressman seems like a weird choice, but his specific combination of the Gold Star, the Officer, and the Treachery will be important. Okay, ASP is discarded. Let's move on. We have among our hidden agendas a Defend Homeworld that we are now using to download a security. That's Anya, also downloaded to the Federation outpost. She goes on to special download Salia. There she is. Defend Homeworld is discarded. Right, then ideally we'd want to play a QStand. If we look at the deck, we see that there are a lot of copies of QStand in there. We didn't get one in our opening hand. Now this is very, very strange, because usually we have a more than 91% chance to get a QStand in our opening hand. There are 11 copies in 40 deck cards, so this is already a weird outlier, but we have an app to deal with that. So in that case, we will flip Obelisk of Massacre, and then once each turn, we may download Massacre Transformations. That's in the deck somewhere, I think, or maybe it was in the QStand. Can't seem to find it. There it is. So we shuffle our hand, and then we move all to the bottom of our deck. And then we draw 7 new cards from the top of our deck, and this one should include a QStand. As you can see, there are multiple copies of QStand in there. The Masaka transformations is discarded. So with the help of the Masaka transformations there, the obelisk is also discarded, we actually end up having a 99.7 chance to get a QStand on the first turn. So meaning it only fails once every 300 games or so. So mathematics is firmly on our side in that respect here. Okay, so we have done that. We will proceed to play the QStand, to take a card from our QStand into hand, and we go for going to the top. QStand is then removed from the game. And we cannot draw cards for the remainder of the turn, but that's not important. Going to the top can be played since we have one gold star in Nora Satie and another in Eric Pressman aboard our facility. So we can download a personal with leadership ×2. That's going to be Admiral Riker. And he proceeds to download any Enterprise since he's aboard a matching facility. So he downloads Starship Enterprise there. And since we have Starship Enterprise, we might as well proceed and use its special download of any original series Federation personnel. So we'll grab Dr. McCoy, wherever he is. I can't seem to find, because he's in our hand. There he is. And he also has a special download of any I'm a Doctor card. So we'll grab I'm a Doctor, not a Bricklayer, discard that to grab from the QStand, from the deck, Esri as our geologist. She can download there because we have a medical and officer together, and the interrupt gives us a destination. So we are not reporting her via outpost text, but because of special reporting, so her mirror quadrant icon doesn't affect us here. She can go to the alpha quadrant just the same. Esri also has a special download. Would you believe it? She downloads crossover. Let's put that there. And now that we have crossover in play, we will flip Quark's isolinear rods. And once per game, you may download to hand a computer skill ×2 personnel who does not have officer. We have somebody in the deck, that's Bareil. He goes to hand. That one will be discarded at the end of our turn. So all these things have already happened, and we haven't actually used our regular card play. As I said, some of these things are now considered orders and you wouldn't be able to use them before your card play. But in this case, we would now use Bareil as our regular card play, report him to the Terran outpost. Remember, we have a treaty in play, and mirror quadrant, that works out. We use our regular card play, now crossover kicks in, and just after you report blah blah blah, Bareil as an example, with your regular card play, you may download a multidimensional transport device to that personnel. So we have that one. It reports there. Bareil also has a special download of any equipment card, so you might as well use him to download a plasmodine relay as well. All right, now what else can we do? We want to get James Tiberius Kirk to the regular space line. For that, we flip Q the referee and we discard it to download a referee icon card. And that is going to be Temporal Vortex. It doesn't show the referee icon here on the card, but it actually had the referee icon. So we played on the time location, allowing Kirk and his ship to time travel, move to the relative present tense of the game, and then Kirk, Baril, and all this equipment are aboard the ship. It flies next door to disrupt Alliance. Here we will beam down Evil Kirk, and then immediately beam him back up the ship. And at this point we are going to trigger Transporter Mix-Up. The mirror quadrant personnel beaming up in its native quadrant can be replaced for the opposite version. So Evil Kirk goes away, in comes Captain Kirk. Now they are conveniently at a Beta region location, so these two guys decide to beam over to a different universe using the multidimensional transport device. It works anywhere anywhere in the corresponding region. So Beta region in the mirror allows us to move over or to beam over to Beta region in the Alpha quadrant. We can't take the ship with us, of course, but we can have these two guys and the equipment they bring with them on the planet surface at relocate settlers. All right, let's see. Starship Enterprise, can we actually fly it? Yes, we can, since we have McCoy somewhere. He has the icon. So let's put everyone there aboard the ship. Let's put these guys all in crew 4 for the moment. Let's fly to relocate settlers. It only has a span of 1. Let's beam up Baril. Let's beam up Kirk. And these 3 pieces of equipment. All right. You know what? Captain Kirk is the matching commander of the Starship Enterprise. So we can now get rid of one of our copies of Make It So to download a ready room door, which in turn allows us to download a captain's order card. So we will go for the DDP, the Defined Dedication Plaque. Okay, that gives our ship range +2. We also have the plasmodine relay aboard, gives us another range +2. So easily enough to get back to cultural observation. That has cost us 5 range so far. And then we will beam down everybody and attempt this mission. Hopefully we got to seed our own Q as the bottom dilemma, meaning we encounter it first. This is the old text. The original text had the same requirements: to leadership and integrity 60 to beat, only the effect was different. To leadership we have on Admiral Riker. Let's count up the integrity. That's 7, and that's 15, 19, 27, 36, 41, 48, 57, 63, 71, and that's only the cards that are guaranteed to hit play in that sequence. If you remember, we had a First Officer Spock in our opening hand that we could have played there. We kept him in hand to increase our chances of drawing into a QStand, but we could end up with even more personnel in play. All right, so the original Q dilemma had the effect of discarding all remaining dilemmas at the location, so the mission was ours to solve. We need anthropology, we have that on Baril. We need leadership, we have that on our mission specialist. And strength greater than 30, well, that's not really an issue. 6, 11, 17, 24, and already over. So that scores us 40 points for the mission, plus 5 for assign mission specialist for 45. And our ship still has 5 range remaining, so we fly next door to Pegasus Search, do the same thing, use our own Q dilemma to bypass all the remaining dilemmas at this mission, and then we can complete the mission. Again, we have a leadership mission specialist. We have navigation and diplomacy on Admiral Riker. We have treachery, a rare skill among Federation personnel on Admiral Pressman here. and the integrity of greater 40 we have already shown. So that scores us another 50 points, plus another 5 for the AMS, bringing us to 100. We have a planet mission completed and we have a space mission completed, so that's the win. And our opponent maybe hasn't even played a card. So, of course, there are various ways to attack this deck. Mission layout can mess up your plan a little bit. Dilemma seeding as well to some extent, but once we are past the seed phase, there isn't all that much that the opponent can do, especially if we go first. Sure, they might have drawn an Amanda Rogers to nullify one of the 2 interrupts that we use to download personnel by going to the top, or the Dr. Bricklayer, or maybe a Q2 to nullify our Q dilemma, and of course then things get ugly because we don't have too much redundancy. But they still actually need to find those cards probably in the opening hand to have a chance to actually beat us here. And Torsten writes that in the 5 games he played, 2 of his opponents actually managed to get such a counter card in their starting hand or at the end of their first turn, and that's how he lost 2 out of those 5 games. In one, he still managed to score 70 points, so the deck has some resilience to actually play a proper game, but the other was a whitewash where he didn't score a single point then. But if your opponent brings these counter cards and has the appropriate preparation, well, it's only fair to congratulate them and move on to the next game. Naturally, decks like this one tend to divide the player base somewhat. Some people think that the game after the seed phase is the real game, the proper game, and are disappointed when they don't get to enjoy that all that much. For others, the deck building part, the preparation, the thinking, what is my opponent going to play, what general strategies will I have to defend against, and so on, what can I assume to see, and also the intricacies of the seed phase are as much part of the game, if not more so, than what comes after the seed phase. So there is no right or wrong about this, but some people prefer one aspect of the game, others prefer a different aspect. It's really up to individual preferences there. Anyway, that's the end of our little history lesson in this throwback edition of Thursday Night Deck Building. Thanks very much to Torsten. I know that he's still around playing 2nd edition in England, and he kindly uploaded the deck list 20 years ago, so we can look back at the game now and see what it was like around the time. And if you enjoyed this at all, please leave a like or subscribe to this channel for more STCCG content. And until next time, expand your power in the universe. Goodbye.